Well, I'll ask the obligatory secret origin question. How did you? I know you come from it genetically as far as being into business, but how did you yourself find your way into an acting career?
It's a cool thing. My dad is a screenwriter, or he was for many, many years. He's sort of pivoted now. He's not old by any stretch, but he's like of retirement age, and he's writing a novel right now. But anyway, I used to witness firsthand. He was a successful screenwriter for many years, and that does not necessarily mean that you got a ton of movies in theaters or that your name is on a bunch of. He was writing constantly and being paid well, and was very frustrated, like sort of all the time. Like he would write something and then the studio would make him do a bunch of drafts until it was something else, or somebody would buy a script and then it would just go on a shelf for 6 years, or just like all these heartbreaks constantly. And I remember saying, when I grow up, I don't want to be in show business. It's too much bullshit and it's too much heartbreak. And my dad seemed so bummed all the time that these things that he spent months working on just turned into nothing. And it's just so sad. So I was dead set on just being any job that had like a weekly paycheck or whatever. I was like, that's what I got to do. Avoid the heartbreak or whatever. But when I was very interested in the fine arts, I was like, I really like comics and I like drawing them, and I liked painting and stuff. So I remember when I got into high school, into ninth grade, the way my high school worked is that the freshmen had sort of the worst priority when it came to choosing their electives, whereas the seniors had first pick or whatever. And then conveniently, by the time I was a senior, they reversed that system because they realized the freshmen should have to get acclimated. That's neither here nor there. I tried to get into the art class, the painting class, and it was full. And so they dumped me into the next available class, which was drama by default. And I was horrified. I had like two friends back then. I was playing Ultima Online, which was one of the early MMO RPGs. And very, very antisocial. I had like a 4.0 GPA, and I immediately came home and I was like, Dad, you got to call the school. There's no way I can be in a drama class. This is so stupid. And he was like, I want you to tough it out for a while and see what happens. And I was like, are you kidding me? There's a bunch of girls in there. I have to do a scene with a girl. This is like insane. And he was like wisely like, yeah. You got to do it. And then like within like 2 months, it was all I cared about, basically, because I was making more friends. I was like, I invited to like a party for the first time, and I was like talking to girls. The whole thing flipped my whole world on its head. And I got really into it. And not just because I did enjoy the work of doing it a lot, but also it sort of made me a more whole person, so I was very interested in that. And I never looked back. That was it. My grades dropped after that because I was doing all the high school plays and musicals and stuff, and I had rehearsal late at night, and I was much happier after that. And that's how I got into it. And my parents bafflingly were supportive of it. I look, now that I have a kid, I just imagine the scenario where he's like, I want to be an actor, and I'm just like, what but I can't have that hypocrisy. I will be open-minded.
It's funny that so many people have told me the stories about how they got into acting because they wanted to meet girls. You're horrified at the thought that you might actually have to be in a scene where you would kiss one.
Yeah, man. But I was so glad I did it. And then I went to college for acting too, which was insane. I went to NYU. I went to Tisch, which is very expensive. And I was very, very lucky that my grandparents had like a college fund for me. And basically my parents were like, sure, yeah, go to acting school. I mean, a lot of trust there, but I'm glad I made it work.
Well, once you got into it, did you have visions of a life in the theater, or were you already thinking about being in front of the camera?
I wanted to be in front of the camera for sure. I'm so glad that I went to an acting conservatory, because I had to do, the particular one I was in at Tisch, we were only allowed to do classical work for 2 years. Wow. just Shakespeare, Chekhov. We got to do some like Moliere sometimes, some Shepard sometimes, but like for the most part, it was just super classical acting training. Yeah. And that's really good for your sort of 10,000 hours, but because my dad had directed a couple of movies when I was like 5 and 6 years old, I knew how magical this sort of set world feels, and I really wanted to be back there. When I was a little kid, he would bring me around to visit a couple days a week or something, and it would just feel, and I was treated like a prince because obviously I'm the director's son or whatever, and
Sure.
the makeup guy gave me a bullet wound in my head and stuff, anything I wanted. I sort of and I love the vibe, the sort of village, I always wanted to do it. So yeah, I mean, after I graduated, I stayed in New York for a little while and tried to make it work out there. But I very quickly came back so I could start being people's assistant and sort of get into the world.
Well, besides the bullet hole in the head, was there a favorite other person that you met while you were visiting the scene, behind the scenes back then?
My dad directed this elephant movie with Bill Murray called Larger Than Life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which follows this unbelievable trend throughout cinematic history where two movies of the same kind will come out of the same year. And it was the second elephant movie of that year. So it kind of got lost in the mix. It was Operation Dumbo Drop was the other one.
Oh, you didn't have to tell me the name of the other one. Of course I knew the elephant movie.
So anytime I would sort of start talking about this movie, they'd be like, yeah, Operation Dumbo Drop. Your dad directed that? I'm like, nah, man.
The other one.
But my dad had sort of a strong relationship with Bill in the late 80s, early 90s, which was sort of at his cinematic peak, although look, he's killing it right now too. We don't want to say that, but he was sort of the biggest star in the world back then with Ghostbusters and everything. And
your dad wrote Quick Change, right?
He wrote Quick Change and directed it with Bill. That was his first directing gig, and that was incredible. That was a tough one for me to remember because I think I was like 4 for that. But I have a wonderful picture of me in my little PJs sitting on Jason Robards' lap.
Oh wow,
it's incredible, yeah. But when my dad did the elephant movie, I was older and I spent a lot of time with Bill. He was that movie was like almost entirely shot on locations across the United States because the premise is like Bill's on a road trip with this elephant. And so he was always sort of like renting some incredible house in whatever state we were in. And then he would have us stay there with it. It was like incredible. And I was friendly with his sons, from his first marriage. They're really cool kids. And, Homer in particular, Luke and Homer were their names. And Homer was actually, I'm sure you know this because you know a lot of trivia. If you ever saw Broken Flowers?
Oh yeah.
The last shot of that movie is Homer, Bill's real son, in the back of that VW Bug, or what was it, a Gremlin or something? I can't remember. So this sort of mystery of like, is it his son? It's like, I guess since I knew the kid, I was like, yes, maybe that's what Jarmusch intended, maybe not. But that was my favorite set memory, was just sort of like watching Bill be popular and charm the shit out of everyone. Anytime we would go to a restaurant, everyone, it was like the whole place would, it was an interesting time. But he was pretty good at keeping the vanity down. He loved it, but he was also not a total schmuck about the whole thing.
So I was looking online trying to figure out what your first film was. And I guess it was Berkeley, although I couldn't actually find the film. I only found the trailer.
Yeah. God, there's this thing about IMDb. There are a grip of like full student films on IMDb that I participated in when I was at NYU, where, they're varying degrees of good and bad. And I wanted to take them. They appear on you can watch these things. I'm defeating the whole purpose by saying it out loud right now, but you can watch any of these early movies I'm in because they've been uploaded onto IMDb. And I got into it with the tech people of IMDb, and they're like, you can't take this out. You can't detag yourself from a project. The only way to do it is to reach out to the person who put it on Instagram and request that he take your name off the movie. And I'm like, I can't call John and be like, hey, remember all those student films we did together? Like, they're embarrassing and you have to take them down. Like, it's too insulting or whatever. But Berkeley, one of my oldest friends is this guy named Nick Roth, who's a comedy writer now, or just a writer, I should say. And his father is this guy, Bobby Roth. This is a kid who I've known since I was 4, and I used to sleep over at this house every weekend. And Bobby Roth is a pretty like very, very hardworking TV director. He's done a ton of TV, and yes, he directed a cool indie film when I must have been mid-teens or something when I did that. I can't remember what year it is, but I'd love to see it too. A bunch of my friends were in that movie too, including Wade, Elaine Marcus, who works now a bunch as a writer, and he was also on Insecure and stuff. He was in that movie with me as well. My old best friend. Yeah, I think my first movie that I would like to admit that it was I Love You, Man. I did
That's
a
what I was
couple.
figuring, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is also not a bad movie.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
That is a classic Paul Rudd vehicle right there. Siegel too.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great job. Where I worked on it for a week for like 1 minute of screen time or whatever. But the point being was I got to work on a movie for a week and sort of experience that, which was tremendous and with low stress, you know.
Well, I know that your list is Sydney's buddy number 2. Do you remember who Sydney's buddy number 1 was?
I think it was David Krumholtz.
You are correct. Very good.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't give him an actual character name.
Well, it's weird. He's listed as Sydney's friend, just number 1, number 2. And then on your page on Wikipedia, it lists you as his friend 2.
Oh, right. Got it. Okay. I love working with Krumholtz, by the way. I'm thoroughly I'm always amused by him, and I like everything he's in. He's a great guy. Which he's one of those rare child actors who like has his shit together and is not, you know, nuts or whatever.
Yeah. Let's see, I'll go for some reader request here, and this one actually is more or less chronological order anyway. How was the experience of working on Scott Pilgrim?
Oh man, I mean that was just the dream right there. It was amazing. I remember, you know, I'm still friendly with Edgar to this day. I mean, God, it must have been 12 years ago or something at this point. I can't remember. 2008.
It is actually, yeah, 2010.
Oh wow, all right. Yeah, that was another movie where, you know, Edgar is like a perfectionist, you know, and so he would be holding up the comic book next to the monitor to make sure like that the frame was identical to the comic book. I mean, it was like that intent. He would be like, we can't shoot this for a half an hour. We need to move the light switch on the wall up 2 inches so that it matches the, you know, just shit like that. It was amazing. But the reason I mentioned all the perfectionism is that, again, I was there for like 34 days or something. And I don't know if you remember, I was in that movie for like 2 seconds.
I was going to say, it's not a huge part.
No, but I made so many lifelong friends on that thing, including Bill Pope, the DP, who I just worked with last week again. One of the, I mean, that's like a royalty right there. And, you know, Mike Sarah and, I mean, who else? Like, there's just sort of a handful. That was such a big, and Bree and, God, Allison Pill. There's so many people who I was just, by nature of how this movie was shot, I had to just spend 12 hours a day sitting around in a room with these people and enjoying myself. That was it. And so it was a really special job. I also got in a lot of trouble at the beginning of that movie, and it scared the shit out of me. I thought my career was going to be over very quickly because Edgar was doing a thing at the time where he had a blog where he would post 1 picture a day from the production of that movie. Yeah. And I remember because I followed him on Instagram or whatever, and it was like day 1, or not Instagram, it must have been just a website, because I don't think I was on there too.
Probably not yet.
Yeah. It was like day 1 of my 365 days of pictures, and it was just a picture of the title page of the script, and it just said Scott Pilgrim versus the World by Edgar Wright, Brian Lee O'Malley. And then when I got the job on that movie a couple months later, I posted a picture of the title page of the script on my Facebook. And within 10 minutes, my agent called me and was like, I'm hearing that you're posting script pages online. What's happening? And I was like, just the title page. And like, it all happened very quickly. I was supposed to go up to Canada to do a table read. They canceled my trip because they didn't know if I was fired yet or not. And then eventually when they saw like what I did, they were like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry." And Edgar gave me a big hug when I got there. And like, this is my first job, you know, I'm like, this is my first big movie. And I was like, oh my God, I just fucked it up so fast. But it was fine. Misunderstanding.
So I went back and looked at the first interview I ever did with you, which was for Traffic Light. And wow. You told me something in that I had completely forgotten because I hadn't been a fan of that show at that time yet.
Yeah.
But you auditioned for Parks and Rec, and it came down to you and Chris Pratt for the Andy Dwyer role.
For Andy, it was a couple more. It was myself, Chris Pratt, one of the Duplass brothers. I can't remember which one. I'm so sorry. And Nick Thune, who's also good.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, that's Nick Duno. There's the Duplass brother, and like Chris Pratt. Nobody knows who the hell this guy is, which is true. You know, essentially.
Yeah,
thank God he got that job. It was an amazing process, by the way. I got to read with Rashida and in front of Amy Poehler and Mike and all these guys. It was like, of course, back then I sort of didn't realize how important all these people were, and it was. I played it so differently than Chris. I was playing it like not a stupid guy, like I was just playing myself like an intelligent person who was sort of mean and lazy, and that's why I was the way I was, making her, you know, pick up after me and cook for me and everything, because I was a jerk. Yeah. It didn't occur to me that if you play it like a dumb, sweet guy, I mean, it's what a better decision that was. It plays, not only does it play funnier, but it also, you're so much more likable. It was just like a great lesson to learn there. Yeah. Good job, Chris Pratt. Not figuring that one out.
That also, I guess, provides you with one of those rare experiences, relatively speaking, in Hollywood, where somebody says, we're going to find something for you, and actually does.
Yeah. I guess so. That's right. I mean, those are the stories that I hear where I get the most jealous, or when somebody auditions and they don't get the role, and then they're like, but they love me so much they wrote something for me. It's like, oh my God, that would be so, what a dream.
But isn't that kind of what Greg Daniels did, though? Because he got the IT role. The IT guy?
The IT guy, yeah, that was an interesting thing. I mean, look, I never read for, was Greg there? I guess he was. But here's the deal. I was on The Office before I tested for Parks and Rec. I had a really quick, that was my first paid acting job, was on The Office. The job, wow. Where I told Pam to go to New York to graphic design school.
Yeah.
That was, like the bumper of the episode, just the last 15, 20 seconds. And then a few years later, when they wanted this IT guy, they passed over me because they're like, you can't come back and be a different person in the same universe. That doesn't. And then they read a bunch of people, and then they just offered it to me. After they read like 20 people, they were like, oh, I guess you just don't mention that you also did this other thing. But it is conceivable that that would be the same person, right? I mean, shit. Yeah. A guy who was a graphic design computer guy then became an IT guy. I mean, that seems feasible to me.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And of course, you're only on a handful of episodes, but you got one of those great parting scenes on your final one.
Yeah, that was incredible. Again, I was pretty young at this point, and essentially what happened was I got on this show as a guest star, and it was my dream. That was sort of the biggest show in the country at that time. And I was like, I did it. I got on The Office. Unbelievable. However, when you're a guest star and you're just starting out, the money is like laughably bad. And that's okay. I mean, I know that's how it works. You work your way up the ladder. That was an early job for me. I was making maybe $1,000 for my work on that. And so when pilot season rolled around, they were like, you got to go out. And when I got the pilot test for Traffic Light, I remember saying to my agent, I can't do this because it's going to mess up my office work. I won't be able to be on The Office if I take this pilot. And they were like, yes, we understand that, but also you've done 5 episodes of The Office and you've made $5,000. This is going to be a bigger deal for you, and you need to do this, establish yourself and stuff. And I was like, okay. So I very sadly, and this was like a really hard decision for me, I was like, okay, I will test for this pilot. And I got the job, and I was devastated that I was going to get kicked off. I knew I was going to get kicked off. And so I showed up for work on The Office, and I didn't know, they handed me that monologue where I flip everyone off at like 6 a.m. while I was in the makeup chair. And I was reading it like, like a tear going down my eye. Like, I can't believe it. I chose money over my favorite show. And coincidentally, my friend Zach Woods showed up the same day. I went to college with Zach Woods. He was in my year at NYU.
Oh, wow.
He was not in the acting program at all. He was just getting a regular degree. He did a shitload of UCB, and he was so fucking funny that he just had an acting career afterward. But I was like, Zach, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm your new boss, which, Gabe was my new boss, I suppose. But that was also the same day I was leaving the show. It was like the changing of the guard there of tall white guys on the show. But it was a great scene.
It can only be one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Man, I missed it. I'll tell you the other thing about The Office is
Yeah.
it's a dream to work on it because it's the same location in every episode. They don't have to light anything. It's already there. They literally just bring the cameras in, shoot it. I mean, I was done by like 11 every day in the morning. You know, it's like insane. Yeah.
Well, I really like yourself wish that Traffic Light had lasted longer, because that was such a great comedy, and especially, I mean, I wasn't far into my marriage at the time, so just being able to see that relationship stuff playing out like that and be like, that's really eerily familiar.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really love that show too. It was well done for what it was. I mean, look, that was my first thing. When I look back on it, I'm like, oh my God, I could have been better. But that's what everybody says about everything they did in the past. But I did like the show a lot. I thought it was very funny. And you know, a big Bob Fisher fan who created and wrote that based on the, you know, he's the Wedding Crasher guy, and he also did he has a handful of other shows that have been on TV since then, and I think he's really funny and great. And that was a really special thing. I did another pilot with him after Traffic Light. He was sort of like identified with my voice, and he was like, you're sort of the way you do your performance is sort of the way that I imagine these words. You know, I was a good like main character guy for him, which is a special relationship that not everyone gets to have, you know.
So there was a pilot I was going to ask you about, and he may have been the one who wrote it. I don't have the title in front of me, but it's the one where it was a talent agency in the 80s, Hollywood talent agency.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't him, actually. That was Ted. Boy,
I could find it. I just just struck me right that second when you mentioned the pilot.
That was an incredible pilot, and it was, oh boy, because I forgot Ted's last name. Now all names are sort of leaving my brain here. You know, the guy from Game of Thrones who had the gold hand. Jesus Christ!
Hang on, I'm going to find it.
Sure. I can do it too. Let's see. Yeah, I should have had this up before I even started. Let me see.
Ted Griffin.
Ted Griffin, thank you so much. Don Hollywood is what it was called. Yeah, 2019.
And Jonathan Pryce, maybe?
Nikolai Koster.
Nikolai, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this was Nikolai and Jonathan's first show after Game of Thrones. And I was like, this is a fucking lock. How can they not?
Thanks, yeah.
Not even close, I guess. But
and Judd Hirsch, come on.
Oh, I mean, can you believe these guys? It was amazing. I was there at work one day when Judd Hirsch fell down. He tripped and fell on the ground. You know, he's in his 80s. We were like, oh my God. And he just like popped right back up and he was like, just pretend that didn't happen. I'm like, okay, Judd. Wow. You know, it was a great gig. And I really like working with Jeremy. Let me get his last name. Jeremy Shamos. I don't need to look it up. He's a wonderful New York theater actor who sort of flew out to LA to do this and was sort of bummed about it because he couldn't summer on the East Coast, you know, and just tremendous. I had a great time on that show, and it was huge. It was stacked. The cast was stacked, and Lola Kirk was in it as well, who I worked with on an indie film. I'm a big Lola Kirk fan. I love her, and I thought she was great in this as well. I was so bummed that didn't go. Damn it.
One of the things I do for the site is a feature called Pilot Error, where I talk about pilots didn't go to series, and so I was immediately scoping out your back catalog, as I do every once, to see what was in there.
Yeah. Look, there was a stretch of time where I did a pilot every year for like 10 years, and like none of those got picked up. So many pilots. Some were bad, some were good. You know, it just runs the gamut.
Actually, recently did an interview with Ray Wise tied to a King Knight.
Amazing. Yeah. How'd you like it?
It was a really eccentric film, but I enjoyed it.
King Knight is directed by one of my oldest friends, is a guy named Richard Bates Jr. Yeah, I went to NYU with him. He was also in my year at NYU. Okay. And he's one of these guys who he's just directed 6 movies. He just did it. He didn't like sit around. He wrote every single one of them. He secured financing himself. You can't be taught this. And they certainly didn't teach it at NYU. I don't think. I mean, I really got to hand it to this guy. I did all of his student films, all of them. Sometimes at great peril, and it was a lot of work, and I got sick many times. And and we're still friends, and he has a part for me in every single one of his movies. And every time I'm not in one of his movies, it's because I had to say no for some weird reason. I was supposed to be in Suburban Gothic. I was supposed to be in, I mean, I was in Tone Deaf, and I think I've done 3 of his 6 movies, but I am a big fan of his. He's amazing.
And Ray said he's been as many as he has been able to schedule. And
exactly.
I'll always be in the running. Whatever he wants me for, I'm in. If I can do it.
That's great to hear from him, because I worked with him again on a pilot that we wrapped like 2 weeks before the first lockdown started in 2020. I did a pilot with that was written and directed by for Christ's sake, look, I'm in this place now where oh my God, I'm gonna look it up. I mean, it's David Wayne. Sorry, I don't know why I forgot his name.
I found it already. It's Today's Special.
Today's Special was one of my favorite pilots of all time. Also didn't get picked up, of course, but Ray Wise played my father in that show. Wow. It was a David Wayne like slapstick comedic soap opera. It was shot exactly like a soap opera. We shot 4 episodes in 5 days, just like to demonstrate to the network that we could do an everyday soap opera. It was going to be an everyday soap opera, 1 episode a day. Wow. But a David Wayne zany comedy. It was like a dream come true. And Ray Wise played my father. He was like a billionaire, and I was like a 40-something-year-old guy who never moved out of the house because I'm a rich kid. And he's in a coma, and I'm trying to kill him so that I get the inheritance. Because right before he slips into his coma, he sort of confides to me that he's going to take me out of the will because he's so ashamed of me. But then he is not able to do it because he's in the coma. So I'm like, we got to kill him so that he can't. It was great. And there's a scene where I'm in the hospital next to him eating hospital steak. And I'm complaining about how shitty the steak is. And I start choking on it. And I spit up the piece of steak. And I'm like, that gives me an idea. So while he's in a coma, I take a chunk of steak and press it into Ray Wise's unconscious mouth, and he starts to choke on this thing in the coma, and then eats it, and then smiles. And I just what a weird ass. But he was a great sport about all that kind of bullshit, especially the King Knight stuff where he played Merlin.
Oh yeah. I told him I think he may be the only version of Merlin to drop the F-bomb, and he says I may well be.
Of course he is. Yeah. Man.
And actually, look at the cast of Today's Special. It also teamed you with a couple other people you worked with before. Matt Walsh and Natalie Morales are both in it too.
Yep. Yeah. Both great people. Matt is, one of the people I met early on. We had the same manager when I first started 15 years ago, and I've just known him for a long time. He's just the sweetest guy in the world. And Natalie, of course, is unbelievable. Natalie is like, the pandemic for her was the opposite of what it was for everyone else. But she sort of made the biggest strides in her career and is getting all these awards, and is like, she's like a serious director now. I mean, that's it. She's in. I'm very proud of her. She's incredible.
Fantastic. Yeah. I talked to Neil Flynn the other day for this song. He's still very much Neil.
Like, I'll put it to you this way: we've texted one time since Abby's went off the air. He's a private person. You know what I mean?
He is. He's my greatest career accomplishment is the fact that I did a 45-minute interview with him for the AV Club, and like I've become friends with the producers of the middle, and they're like, we didn't even know he was capable of talking for 45 minutes. So
I can't believe either. I can't believe either. He when
he asked the right questions.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I give yourself a pat on the back for that one. The one story I always tell about him is that he, when we started shooting the show, it was like the first shoot tape night. His agents had sent him like a beautiful bottle of whiskey. It was like $175 bottle of whiskey, and I saw him holding it, and I was like, oh my God, it's a great bottle. I'm a whiskey fan also. And he was like, I only drink Jack Daniels, and just handed me this $175 bottle. I still have some of it. I'm just like milking it for years. Anyway, he's a simple man, a good man.
He is. Both counts.
Yeah.
Well, how was the Abbey's experience? Because that was such a unique set, being outside, inside kind of thing.
Yeah, it was great. This was one of those things where I think we had a shot. It was a Mike Schur show, even though he had his hands were not on it very much. It was in his, catalog. Yeah. And I thought that was a great boon to us or whatever. But the main thing is that, you know, the show was picked up, and then while we were shooting the show, the president of the network switched over to a new person.
Yeah.
Or people. I think it became 2 presidents of NBC or something in a partnership. I'm not exactly, I can't remember now, but they basically wiped the slate clean. There's a number of reasons why people would do that. It's like, yeah, what if the show's a big hit? We didn't bring it, so it doesn't reflect positively on us in any way. Their big thing was This Is Us, which they dove into head first, and that became a, you know, titanic juggernaut of a show. But Abby's was amazing. It was the first outdoor live audience sitcom, which is weird as hell. But it worked. You know, it did work. It got cold, even though it's LA and it's the valley, but we're up on top of a mountain essentially. If you go to Universal Studios and you take the tour, the tram tour, it goes on Wisteria Lane, which is the, you know, that from that crazy show.
Desperate Housewives.
The Desperate Housewives.
Yeah.
We shot on one of the houses on that street, so you drive right by Abby's basically every time you take that tour. But it's like way on the top of a mountain, freezing cold, near Burbank Airport. We'd have to stop every 20 minutes for an airplane. You could see them taking off. We'd be like, oh shit, we got 18 minutes before the but after all was said and done, like, the cast was very, very cool. Not it wasn't just a bunch of movie stars, you know what I mean? It was a lot of well-cast, talented people. I'm friends with them all for life. You know, it was a really great experience. And then, you know, the show was canceled, and then no one could go inside anymore to see live audience shows. And I'm like, oh, I bet you're kicking yourself in the butt for this one. You could have had a live audience show that's outdoors. We were 2 months ahead of that or whatever, a year ahead of it. But I loved it. It was great. And it's 10 minutes from my house, which is like, it has
always
never.
helps.
Yeah.
So I use this interview as an excuse to go back and watch a bunch of episodes of Veep.
Yeah.
You have a favorite takedown by Dan over the course of the series?
Yeah, there's an episode that Chris Addison directed where Dan says something and I correct. He was like, you know, that's a pretty good metaphor. And I correct him. I say, it's actually a simile, not a metaphor. And then he calls me a fat girl right after that. And we were it's one of the simpler ones, but we were having a hard time making it work. And Chris was like, I want you to run this scene as fast as you possibly can. Like, go nuts. Like, make it so fast that it seems like a fucking joke. And we did it, and it was the funniest thing we ever did on the whole series, I think. Or that can't be true. There's so many good ones. But I really like that one, and I really like the episode where I go jogging with him and Matt Walsh around like a little pond. I can't remember what episode it is now, but that's the one where I say that Matt moves slower than a Mississippi detective investigating the murder of a young black man. They got really creative. The weirdest thing about those great lines and those great takedowns is that the ones that made it on the air were always like the 6th version. They would be like, oh, say this. Oh, and I'm like, you guys are just coming up with this shit. Like, this is like really fucked up, vile stuff. You guys are just flinging off the top of your heads there. It was great. It was fun because you could see how much fun the writers were having with it. It was like a fun challenge for them to go as far as they possibly could. Because then that sort of dynamic where I'm not saying it, I'm making another guy say it. There's like no limit to what can be said there as long as you're passing the buck. And that's something that Dan Backendall, of course, who played my boss, you know, to make a short story long, when we would go to do Veep, at least in the early seasons, we would have rehearsal days, which was unheard of now because of budget and all this, where we would sort of do all the scenes and see what was the funniest and sort of rewrite them based on how we performed them and stuff. And Dan had a joke in our first episode where he passed a line to me in the way that he does for the rest of the show. What was it like, Will? And then I had to say it. And he was like, this is the funniest part of this. Let's do more. And Dan is the one who gave me like 3 more of those in our first episode. He gave me his own lines because he was like, it's funnier if you say it. And that became, I was only supposed to do 1 episode. And we were on that show for the whole 7-year run after that, because sort of Dan was like, it's funnier if we were like a duo here. And he sort of made that happen in the beginning. I really owe him a lot.
I think my favorite one, just by virtue of the fact that It's delightful wordplay, even if it's homophobic. Wilbo Faggins. I
Yeah,
did not remember it, and I thought I was going to spit coffee across my office.
good. They have a lot of ones like that for. There's a lot of Lord of the Rings references for Jonah and for Will as well. Yeah, they're good. They're all really well written takedowns. It's like surprisingly the strong suit of all those writers was to like, and they were all British, by the way, all the writers. So they, I mean, you know, I guess it makes sense. They're clever.
I was thoroughly impressed with that series, how it shifted hands from the creative team and still managed to not even skip a beat, it seemed like.
That's unbelievable feat right there. And I got to hand it to Dave Mandel, who just knocked it straight out of the park. You know, for those of you at home who did the first 4 seasons of Veep, we were Armando Iannucci and his crew of English writers and directors. And after 4 seasons, which is already wildly past an English show's you know, limit, they decided to call it quits, but they passed the reins over to Dave Mandel, who was sort of a Seinfeld Curb Your Enthusiasm showrunner, who picked up the reins flawlessly, as you said. If anything, it just got better. I could not believe, you know, you step into a show that's already that good and popular and then just keep it going. It's wild.
So how did you take on the job of playing PJ O'Rourke?
That was an interesting gig. You know, there are certain parts of that guy that I could definitely that I resonate with, in that because of having creative partnerships over the last 20 years and scene partners or writing partners or producing partners, you always have to work with somebody in this business. And there are certain times where you feel like you're picking up the slack and you have to cover the other person's ass, or you vice versa or whatever. And I sort of identified a lot with the main role of PJ O'Rourke for me in that movie was the guy who took over when what's his name? You just gotta give me a free pass now to forget people's names.
All good.
Who's that movie about again? You know, the
National Lampoon.
I know. Look, I'm not trying to think of. I'm trying to think of the actual guy's name.
I'm usually much better at this.
I forgot first. That's how it's contagious.
That's how I'm going to view it.
Here it is. He played.
Doug Kenny.
Yes, that's right, Doug Kenny. Sorry. You know, Doug Kenny was the guy who started National Lampoon. He was notoriously sort of a drug addict. I mean, back then it wasn't called that. It was just like a fun party guy or whatever. But he basically took a 1-year cocaine hiatus or 2 from the National Lampoon and just dumped it on his friend, the PJ, who I played, who was, you know, like a real pot smoking hippie, cool guy, who then weirdly later in life switched to becoming like a conservative talking head guy, which is just that part. Look, we didn't touch it in the movie, so I didn't have to wrap my mind around making that transition. But I had a great time, and that was my first time working with David before the pilot.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where this is one of these jobs. This happens to me a handful of times. If you have a relationship with a casting director, and I have relationships with several I mean, you know, beyond a work relationship, if you're friendly with them. And one of them is Allison Jones, who is one of the biggest, you know, comedy casting directors in town, if not the biggest one. And if you look at my career, it's 100% entwined with hers. All the important jobs I had, like Scott Pilgrim, like Veep, like I Love You, Man, everything we've been talking about, these are all The Office. These are all Allison Jones jobs. And Futile and Stupid Gesture was also a Allison Jones job. And sometimes when I don't have an audition for a movie or a show and the table read is coming up and they still haven't cast a dozen roles, Allison will call me and say, hey, can you read these 8 or 9 different roles in a table read? And I love it.
Yeah.
I get to play. Some of them are just 2 lines. Some of them are more significant, whatever. I do stage direction. I love that too, because it's a really thankless job that you can be very bad at. You have to be good at it, and I can do it well. And sometimes when you do these favors, they will throw you a little consolation prize and you get one of the jobs in the show. And this was one of those times where I did the table read. I read 5 or 6 people, and I got the PJ O'Rourke gig, partly because I kind of look like the dude, I think, at least with the long hair and everything.
Yeah.
And I had a tremendous time on that. All my stuff was with Will Forte, who I was blown away by what a normal, nice person he was. Because, I'm a big fan of like MacGruber or whatever he calls it. And that movie, when he's like fucking a ghost on a tombstone and like, that's like the hardest I've ever laughed, I think, in my whole life. But he's just not that guy. He's just like a totally normal guy. And I remember on the last day we were walking to our cars together, and we get to our cars and I was like, is this you? And he's driving like a 2007 Honda Civic. And he's like, yeah, the paparazzi guys make fun of me all the time when they see me getting. I'm like, but he's like, I don't give a shit about any of them. And I'm like, Will Forte, the greatest guy who ever lived. That was a great cast also. And I got to say, that's when I made friends with Rick Glassman for the first time. He's a special person who I've never seen anyone look more like the person they're playing than Rick Glassman and Ivan Reitman. It's like shocking how it looked.
I would say with Will Forte, I will second that. He's just the nicest, down-to-earth guy. I really have only met him one time when he was doing Last Man on Earth.
Oh yeah, great show.
I forget, he was talking about Bob and Ray, comedy duo, and I said, well, have you ever seen this special from SNL, the early days, where it was like Jane, Gilda, Lorraine, Bob, and Ray, where it's just the three female cast members and Bob and Ray doing sketches. And he's like, what? No. So I turned him onto that, and
nice.
Was like, if he doesn't remember anybody else from the TCA during that period, he'll remember me just because of the fact that I turned him onto that, I think.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's a weird thing to turn anybody onto 40 years after the fact, but I mean.
Oh yeah, but that's exactly the kind of thing you would care about and remember.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I only recently started watching I'm Sorry, and I mean, that is a funny fucking show.
I love that show. And honestly, I got to do some of my favorite work in there. I'm Sorry, it's Andrea Savage, who it's her baby, or it was, I should say. She worked her ass off. Now that I have a kid, I don't know how she did it. All the things she did on that, stayed a mom. And, it's very much just her voice and how she lives her life. And, we met each other during Veep times. And she just said, hey, she just offered me this gig. I don't get a lot of offers. Nobody does. But she was like, we had a good relationship. And when we were doing the finale of Veep and we were both aged up, we were sort of in the same, I don't know, we really got along. She's a very, very funny person. And I feel like she really called in a lot of favors for that show. She got a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Big names and cameos and stuff. And Dale, our first AD from Veep, was doing a lot of work on that show as well. And she did it. I mean, that's what you got to do, sort of make a Hail Mary and then make a great show. And that was it. And it was very, very free form, that show. She was like, here's the scene, it's written down, but just, you don't have to say anything that's written down here. And one of my favorite scenes that I've ever done, it's like at the top of my reel or whatever, is the scene where I have to come out to her as straight because she thought I was gay the whole time. Her brother.
Yeah.
And she's like, I already told mom you're gay. And I was like, oh my God, you told mom? And it was really, we ran it like twice. And then she's like, now we're not going to do the script anymore. And sort of 50% of that scene is just like sort of a road she took me down. It was really fun. I felt really good. Those are the ones you remember because it didn't feel like work at all. It felt like you were playing fun. That was a great show.
I just watched the episode where their daughter is learning about death. It's like scoping out your apartment or your house rather. It's like I like the big room with the fireplace. I think that's actually your uncle's room. Yeah, that is my room.
Yeah. Oh man, I almost forgot about that too. Jeez, that was an interesting thing. What was that on TBS or something? No,
True TV, wasn't it?
True TV. That's right. Yeah.
But the first two seasons are on HBO Max now. So,
oh, great.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Yeah. I meant to mention earlier with the Parks and Rec audition thing, but you still managed to make your way into the Marvel Universe, albeit in a smaller way than Chris Pratt did. I guess technically two different characters, although I suppose you could argue they're the same character if you wanted. Probably not.
Oh, you're talking about what?
You're in Marvel's the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for an episode, but then you're also in Captain Marvel.
I forgot about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I forgot about that. Yeah. Those are just classic Auditions, baby. I mean, you know, auditioning for guest star roles is sort of my bread and butter. And sometimes they turn into bigger things, like on New Girl, for example. I auditioned for a 2-episode arc or whatever. And then I, you know, these things sort of, yeah, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door, as they say. And a lot of times it works out. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah, that was just a classic, like, audition. I think back on these auditions that were before COVID, because it's hard to remember past couple of years now.
I'm sure, yeah.
All the auditions I've done for the last 2.5, 3-ish years now, I've just been in my home with my wife, and it's like, I think back to when I like would go in for people and the producers are there and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's such a, I miss it. I'm the guy who wants to go back into the room.
Yeah.
I don't like tape auditions, and I think I'm definitely in the minority there, because you know, you can do as many takes as you want, you can make it perfect, you can spice it up and, you know, whatever, make sure it's good, but like, I don't like that. That levels the playing field. You know what I mean? If you're forced to go into a room and there's a bunch of dudes waiting outside to also go in the room, you got one shot. And if you're a room guy, that's it. If you're a tape guy, you might not get that job, and now it's all flipped on its head. You know what I mean? But that's what a tangent that was. I remember going in for that, and it was really fun. And then by the time I got on Captain Marvel, it was like mega secretive, and they were like, you have an audition tomorrow for a Marvel movie. And I was like, can I get the sides? And they're like, you will be given, you have to download an app on your phone or iPad or whatever. And this app will allow you to view your sides for 1 hour, for 60 minutes. And then you won't be able to look at the scene again until you're in the casting office. Then they'll give you the physical lines to read. The fuck? So I didn't even know. And by the way, when I read the scene, my name was character 1, and then the other 2 people in the scene were character 2 and character 3. They wouldn't even let me know. So when I showed up to Captain Marvel, I had no idea who was in the scene with me. I was like, Samuel L. Jackson, please God, Samuel L. Jackson. Or like, and then sure enough, I got there and I was like, yes, Samuel L. Jackson. What a weird process that is, you know, like what? Anyway, I guess they kept the secret that I was the medical examiner, whatever, who cares, you know.
And was it everything you hoped it would be to work with Samuel L. Jackson?
Holy shit, it was amazing. Like, he had this assistant who was sort of, this is the part that I remember it the most was, the scene was great. They only had to do like 2 takes. They're both champs, him and the Australian guy. I mean, the, goddamn, what's his name? Villain, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
They're both lovely people. Bang that scene out and no problem. I was only there for a couple hours. But the most fascinating part for me was like we rehearsed and then they were sort of like relighting or whatever. So I was sitting around for like 40 minutes in a chair sort of nearby Sam Jackson. And his assistant kept coming up to sort of brief him on what was going on, because that's like the busiest guy in the world, Samuel L. Jackson. And I kept looking at his assistant like, what the, it looks exactly like him. It was like, I was like, is this his brother or something? And it was like, this is a guy who used to be a stand-in and they worked together for so long, for so many years, that he like has him on the payroll now and like does this. But he was like, okay, so we got to go to Vegas next week for this thing. And Sam Jackson was like, yeah, okay. The big plane or the little plane? And the guy said, it's the little plane. He's like, ugh. Can we get the big plane? All right, don't, you know what? Don't ask them. It's okay. We don't need the big plane. And I was like, yeah, man, like this guy hasn't flown commercial in 20 years, I'm sure. I mean, geez, the big plane or the little plane, because it was like the studio's plane or whatever that he gets to. Anyway, what a boss. Love it.
Talking about roles that turned into bigger things, was that the same case with Blackish? Was that originally going to be a small role?
I didn't know exactly what that was going to be. I worked with Kenya Barris, is a good friend of mine. Another sort of like just juggernaut, a titan of the industry right now. I mean, he has just got his hands in everything. He's doing a million things. Basically what happened is I did a show for him when Hulu did not have original content yet, and it was just a playback service of whatever TV was on last night, you know.
Yeah.
They were just starting to do some original, like other services were doing original programming, and they were dabbling. They decided to do web series on Hulu. Right. This is a very quick-lived thing they did. But they got Kenya, so they hired Kenya to make this show called We Got Next. on Hulu Shorts or whatever the hell they were calling it. And I did it for $100 a week. It was a 10 or 15-minute episode each week of like a pickup basketball game. A couple of guys who met every week just to play basketball. And it was like an interesting sort of Kenya-esque thing where there was like a white guy, a black guy, a Latino guy, and they would sort of talk about their worlds intersecting or whatever. Yeah. And the white guy was Bill Fagerbaki, who you know, his most famous role, I guess, is Patrick the Starfish on SpongeBob. You know, he talks like this. In real life, he kind of talks like this too. But he's like 6'7" in real life. And they hired me to play his son. That was the first time I met Kenya. And he hated me. He was sort of like a little bit of his character was like sort of a Republican guy. And I was his son, who was like a yoga teacher, hippie guy that he could not stand me. And so I would show up in every other episode or something, and I would say something like namaste, and then he would, you know, go like, ugh, I hate my son or whatever. And I met Kenya, and I worked on that show really hard for $100 a week, and he never forgot me. He's put me in Blackish, he's put me in Grownish, he put me in Black AF, he put me in his new Look Who's Coming to Dinner reboot that he did with Jonah Hill and Murphy. You know, he's a guy who remembers, and I really respect him for it. Not a lot of guys like that, you know. Just looking at him. But Blackish, he said, he sent me a text message that was like, we need a new white guy at the office. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I thought I was replacing Jeff Meacham. And so when I got there and Jeff was still there, I was like, he said new white guy. Here's the old one. But I realized he just wanted an additional white guy. That was an amazing time. 100% of my work on that show was in that one room in the and it was like a joy. Anthony is a joy. Dion Cole is like my favorite person in America, basically. And Jeff Meacham, another great guy. And of course, I mean, obviously, my father. Sorry, let me get my cat out of here. I forgot he was hiding behind my computer. You want to sit on my lap? Or you want to get out of here, pal? All right. Anyway, it was a great job. And you know, Kenya directed a handful of those episodes. I was in the episode after Trump got elected. Oh, and I had to play the guy who voted for Trump and was like, here's why I voted for him, and do that for real and like mean it. And Kenya directed that and had to be like, you know, here are your talking points, and like this is, and I was like, fuck. We were all so mad, you know. Sorry to my conservative listeners.
No.
You know, we were also all of the we were so upset and hurt and angry, and he was able to just sort of like put it aside and see the other side of the argument, you know, in a really clear way. And myself and Catherine Reitman were the two Trump voters who had to sort of plead our case. You know, we went through a lot of weird shit on that show. It was really a special place. You know?
It seems like only yesterday I was saying, well, he won, but we'll make it work. You know, he's president, and we'll make this work. And did not happen.
Nope. Did not work out. Who would have thought? Jesus.
Well, I know we're in the home stretch here. I'm going to ask about the Millers, though, since that was the last time I saw you. And just that cast alone, I'm sure, was fun to work with.
Yeah, that was my first multicam show. You know, for the folks back home, that means like a studio audience show. I mean, every show has multiple cameras, but the multicam sort of refers to the fact that all three are going at the same time in front of the audience or whatever. Anyway, it was my first live audience show, which is a whole new ball game from what I was used to for years. You know, I went to the acting conservatory. I was doing The Office, which is like the most like naturalistic show possible, and I was doing a lot of shows like that. And all my work was about subtlety and sort of, you know, small looks and glances and stuff. All that's out the window. You got to be sort of a clown and play for the back row. And I did have an adjustment period. The first week was really tough for me. And the person who got me through it was Will Arnett. Again, you sort of see the personality of the people he plays on TV, and you're like, this guy might be a sort of a douchebag. Not at all. He's like the greatest guy of all time. And he was like, he would say to me, like, I know you're so funny, and here's how you should tackle this line or scene or whatever. And he, you know, he really helped me through it in a big way. And then I really owe him that much, you know, that he was like, he wasn't the guy who was like, this kid needs help. What an annoying thing that we have to deal with or whatever, but he was great. And that's also where I met Jim Amaze, who I think is like the sweetest person in the world. Of course, Margot Martindale, like a national treasure. How do we get all these people on this show? Like, what a great show. She got nominated for Emmys for drama while we were doing The Millers. She was like a guest star on The Americans, I guess is what it was.
Yeah.
It's tough to get that guest star nomination, but she won, I think, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
think you're right. Yeah.
My God. Yeah, that was a great gig.
And Bo. Can I ask about Bo?
Oh, Bo. Yeah, of course. I love Bo. He gave, he had these like, this is the funniest thing that I felt like such a badass, because Bo would sit in these zero gravity chairs all the time. Like instead of using the cast chairs that they gave us, the like classic, whatever, the Hollywood chairs that you sit in. Yeah. He would always bring this zero gravity chair, which was essentially like this chair that, reclines all the way back so that you're lying flat. And he's like, I love this thing. I sleep in it all day when I'm not working. Blah, blah. And I tried it out a couple times. I was like, this is a great chair. You're not kidding, Bo. And then he bought me, when the show got canceled, he bought me one of those chairs. And I was like, that's so sweet. Then cut to like whatever, 5 years later, I did this pilot for The Old Man, which is finally coming out with Jeff Bridges.
Yep.
And he was sitting in the fucking zero gravity chair on set. I was like, I'm very sorry to bother you, Jeff, but I just want to let you know your brother gave me one of those chairs at home and I use it in my backyard all the time. And he was like, he gives those chairs to everybody. I didn't stop you, whatever. It was a great moment to kind of but Bo was tremendous on that show. He's one of these guys who Will would fuck with him all the time because he's such a nice guy. He would forget his lines because he was in his late 70s at that point. Yeah. He would forget his lines, and so what he would do is write them. They hated this. Write his lines down in pen, like on the furniture on the set. So he would cross over here, look down at the table to his line, and then say his line. And then the prop people or whatever, the set deck people would have to repaint the furniture every day. But Will would always do this thing where he would like move a bowl of fruit over where Bo wrote his line down on the table. So he would like walk over and be like, "Oh, damn it. Who covered my lines up or whatever." We had a good time over there. We got taken down because we had the post Big Bang Theory time slot, so our rating like through the roof. It was amazing. And then basically Chuck was like, I want Mom in that slot. That's my new show. And CBS is like, I don't know if we're going to do that. And he's like, if you don't, I'm going to take away the rights to the Big Bang reruns or something. He had some kind of leverage where they're like, yes, sir, we'll do whatever you want. And then they stuck us on Monday against Monday Night Football. And then we were canceled within like 3 weeks. Like who would have seen that coming?
Never could have called it.
Yeah.
I guess just to wrap up, you look at your career and just this tremendous arc of great show to great show to great show to great show. I mean, what do you attribute that to other than luck? I mean, is it the special sauce that you bring to something that you can identify, or?
I mean, that's a good question. Yes, some of it is luck for sure. My dad always used to say, work begets work, and I think it was lucky for me to get some of those early jobs for me, like I Love You Man and The Office, for example, which, as I told you, were both Allison Jones. When I first started working in Hollywood professionally as an actor, I had been an assistant for many years to different people, different jobs. And the last guy I worked with was a producer by the name of Stuart Kornfeld, who passed away during the pandemic. He was a great friend of mine, and he was his credits, I'm sure, because he's like a big time old school, like he did like Kafka and The Fly and stuff like that. I mean, he's amazing. And after I worked with him for about a year, I did the Tenacious D movie with him, and then I decided I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to be a professional actor now. And he was like, "Are you sure you don't want to work on Tropic Thunder?" And I was like, "No, I need to break out on my own here. I don't want to get stuck on this for another 8 months or whatever." And he's the one who set me up with a manager, essentially. He did that for me, and I really, I could never thank him enough. But when I first started out, the manager was like, "What's your game plan here? What do you he knew I had graduated from NYU and I had several honors there from acting or whatever, but he didn't really, I had nothing to go on. And I said, I want to do the Seth Rogen track. I was heavier back then, and I was like, this is a chubby Jewish guy who's become a movie star. He's doing it. Let me go down that. I need to get into this. I don't want to do drama. Like, let me get in the ground floor with comedy. And he sent me the first audition he sent me on was for Allison Jones, my manager. It was for that TJ Miller movie, She's Out of Your League.
Oh yeah.
And I was auditioning for the TJ Miller role, actually. I guess it was a Jay Baruchel movie. That's what I meant.
It was officially, I think.
And I did the audition, first audition, straight out of acting school. And Allison Jones said, how come I never seen you before? And I said, this is my first audition. And she was like, well, let me just level with you right now. You're not going to get this part. I knew that already. I just kind of wanted to see what you could do here. But will you come back tomorrow and I will have you read for some other shit? And I was like, okay, which is already looking back on this, it's like way above and beyond Call of Duty for her to do something like that. But she took an interest, she's like a person like that. And when I came back the next day, she read me for I Love You, Man. She read me for The Office and a handful of other things too. And I got 2 of those jobs, and so cut to me on the set of I Love You, Man. This is my first movie. And Jason Segel's agent was a woman that I had worked with many times in a different way. When I worked for Stewart, I would talk to her on the phone all the time. She's Jack Black's agent also.
Okay.
I said, hi, Sharon. She's like, what are you doing here, man? Whose assistant are you? And I said, no, I'm in the movie. I'm in the movie. I'm an actor. I got a job. She's like, get the fuck out of here. Really? And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, she was there visiting Jason. She said, what else are you doing? And I got to say, like, The Office.
Yeah.
Just like you said, luck, right place, right time. She signed me as an agent like the next day. Then I had an agent all of a sudden, and she was a big deal agent, way too big of a deal for me, to be perfectly honest. But she did the right thing and passed me on to one of her junior guys, and that's how I got an agent right away. And it just sort of getting those 2 jobs from Allison Jones of that high of a quality, I Love You, Man, and then The Office. It really got the ball rolling for me, and people are like, oh, he can do that stuff. And I'll also say this: when I was doing I Love You, Man, I got along pretty well with Paul Rudd. Impossible not to, of course, the greatest guy. And he gave me a job on Party Down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I watched that the other day too.
Had no idea he had anything to do with that show. Did you? He's a producer of Party Down.
If I knew that, I'd forgotten it. Wow.
I don't even think his name is on it. But he enjoyed me. We enjoyed each other. He gave me that job. And that was one of my favorite scenes also, that Adam Scott scene directed by Fred Savage, who was also sort of do your thing, whatever. We shot that at 10 o'clock at night. It was like the worst day ever for Adam Scott. He was so exhausted. But he played ball. It was great. Those are the sort of connections that happen where, I did well for Allison. That's the thing that takes the luck aspect out of it. I didn't fuck up for Allison. I did do a good enough job for her that she was like, I would like you to put you in something else. Yeah. The rest of it is luck. That I was just I met Sharon there. She signed me the next day. All these things are really lucky. It's sort of the like 21st century version of some guy stopping you at the mall and being like, you got a face for the pictures. I had a lot of good luck in a short period of time. That's how I got started.
Well, you've done well for yourself, I think.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm very, very privileged to have worked on all these shows that I like. There are some shows, most working actors will do stuff they don't like. In fact, all of them will, and I have too. But I've been fortunate enough for it to be tipped mostly in my favor. It's great.
I pretty much know the answer to this, I think. But is there a favorite project you've worked on over the years that didn't get the love you thought it deserved?
Oh, didn't get the love, huh?
Yeah.
I would put Scott Pilgrim in that category. You know what I mean? Financially, that was not technically a successful movie.
I think it's since found that love, thankfully.
Oh yeah, it's got a real cult following now, thank God. But that didn't get the love. I'll say Abby's. I really, really, really love that show. What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you might say Traffic Light.
Oh, Traffic Light. Yeah, sure. It's hard for me to go back that far in my mind. I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched it since it originally aired. And
I almost bought it. You can get the whole thing for $8.99 on Amazon Prime, and I was very tempted to do it because I know I probably have screeners around here still. I kept if I save anything, usually it's comedy DVDs from the screeners because those we just put on and revisit quickly. But I really remember it fondly. I don't think I would be disappointed if I revisited it. So.
Right. I should too. It's long enough ago that I sort of let it slip out of my mind. But, I'm still friends with Aya Cash, who I treasure as well. She is just super successful these days. Killing it out there. And of course, Dave Denman. I love him too. What a great guy. He's a wonderful. We have 2 kids who were born like a week apart from each other.
Oh, wow.
He's a special dude.
I actually just watched a pilot with him the other day. One of those that didn't go anywhere. The Beverly Hills Cop pilot.
No way. He was in that?
Yeah.
Shit. Who was he playing?
The detective who was working with Axel Foley's son.
No way.
Yeah.
Great job.
It's a fun pilot. And it was, I don't know, Barry Sonnenfeld directed it. It's like, how does that not go? And Eddie Murphy pops in and is in it for like half the pilot working with his son. It's like, it's stupid this didn't go. There's no sense of it.
Makes me feel better about all my failed pilots, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's been so great getting to talk to you again and catch up and everything.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me, and I only hope I didn't run my mouth too much there. I feel like I talked a lot.
That's what the people who subscribe to this newsletter like.
All right.
Like that's pretty much what they asked for. So
got it.
It's a win, I think.
Okay.
Well, excellent. I look forward to seeing your next project, whatever it may prove to be.
Thanks. Great.
Awesome, Ben. Good talking to you again.
Take care.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.